Hi, Christine. Hi, Christine. I was up early this morning. I did my early one. So now we're going to do the build on a cult in Brixton. Now, you know me, I like to play my podcast because I feel that there's some names which I cannot pronounce, and it's best to get the accuracy of the names because that is so important, because these are the people who has messed up other people's lives, saying that they're God, saying that they're whatever. And, it's best to get the names right, in particularly, especially if it's from the Indian region, the Asian regions, particularly. I did get Rashnish name wrong a few times because they put it in all different ways. They never called him Rashnish, they called him something else. So with this one here, I'm going to play. Okay, it might be a long one, I know, but the idea is to get the story on Spar, get the story told so that we all are on the same.
As he has been in the media. I figured out his age from research that he was born in 19.
Okay, so the lady, she's going to tell the story of this cult in Brixton, because most of the cults covered are normally across the pond. But with that said, it's not necessarily, there are cults probably in UK or Europe. I know there was one somewhere, I can't remember, Russia or somewhere. There's a multitude of them. Okay, I cannot cover. I can only cover like a few of them. Like the most dangerous ones out of all of them. Um, this one I feel was a dangerous one. I feel so. You have to listen carefully to all the podcasts that is put up, because when you put up the visual, sometimes it distracts you from the whole story. Sometimes it's best to just listen to the story and hear it, how what's happened, how it happened, how they got caught. All that is important, because mind you, people be looking for a nirvana in any spaces that they need to, any enlightenment that they need to. So, yeah, I'm gonna let this play. Yeah, Christine, we're on it today. I mean, after this, I've got to go do some stuff anyway. But um, I'm gonna let it play, and yeah, we all, because like it's gonna be the first time I'm hearing it for myself, like I did with the other guy, hearing the story properly. Because when I read it, sometimes when you read stuff in black and white, sometimes it's best to hear it. And we're going to hear from one of his victims as well.
As he has been in the media. I figured out his inspiration, which we may be needing at this time, and it is about a cult near my hometown founded by Aravindan Balakrishnan, who I'm going to shorten to Bala, as he has been in the media. I figured out his age from research that he was born in 1940 in Kerala, India, but migrated to Singapore, Malaya, where his father was a soldier. When he was 10 or 8, most reports state he was 8 when he moved, and it was the first time he met his father and was described as a quiet child. So a bit more about his early life. He attended Rasfall's Institution and later the University of Singapore. And in 1977, so he would be 37, while living in London, his Singaporean citizenship, which he gained in 1960, was revoked due to his leadership of the Workers' Institute of Marxism Leninism Maya Zedong Fort, which the Ministry of Home Affairs accused of engaging in activities which are prejudicial to the security of Singapore. In 1973, so he'd been living in London for 4 years, and he emigrated to the UK in 1963 on a British Council scholarship to study at the London School of Economics, and married his wife Chandra in 1971 and continued to take part in protests and sit-ins. It was said from his close political allies, for example Stephen Chang, that Bala developed a grand self-delusion that he was a great revolutionary leader, and he began to expose his extreme megalomaniac, control freak, and authoritarian characteristics. So, this was what he was like between 1969 and 1971. In 1974, Bala and his small clique were expelled from the Communist Party of England, to the Marxist-Leninists, on account of their pursuance of conspiratorial and splittist activities. Basically, they were spreading standards against the party and trying to put themselves above the party, and so they were expelled. So he worked in ordinary jobs, but he discouraged his followers from joining trade unions, describing them as agents of the imperialist fascist bourgeoisie. So he sounds quite a grandiose person and with some delusional beliefs at this point in time. He promised true believers immortality, and he threatened doubters that they would come to harm. A man who attended the Workers' Institute in the mid-1970s said to a newspaper he was incredibly paranoid. He said when a fire engine went past Brixton fire station, which wasn't far away, he said it was psychological warfare and that it was the fascist state out to get them. So very, very paranoid as well. So by 1976, his Workers' Institute had moved into premises on Acre Lane in Brixton, South London. And on the ground floor was a meeting room and a shop selling communist tracts. And upstairs was a communal living room where about 15 of Bala's core followers slept on the floor, with men in one room and women in another. And now he was known as Comrade Bala. However, some members drifted away or were ostracized, and it's mainly men who did that. Who were subject to this. So in 1976, it left him with himself and 10 female cult members who moved to Brixton. 10 female cult members in Brixton, and the group was now called the Workers' Institute of Marxism, Leninism, Mao-Zedong Thought, as I said earlier. So a total of 13 members lived there, and members were handed a rota of chores and only allowed to go out in pairs, which Bala claimed was because the area they lived in was notorious for violence and anything could happen. So 6 of the 13 members, which actually is quite surprising when you think about what they were experiencing, which I'll describe later on, they actually worked in paid jobs. So there was one who was a nurse, there was one who was a midwife, there were a couple who were shop assistants, a laundry and a trade union official. And those who didn't go out to work remained indoors inside the collective, where every day they had to attend Bala's morning lectures, standing to attention, sometimes for 3 or 4 hours. And anyone who sat down was punished. So every day, comrades had to sing songs celebrating his existence. The anniversary of his conception and his birthday, which was 16th of October and 16th of July, was celebrated. And significant world events which happened on or close to those dates were seen as being synchronized with his life, providing evidence of his greatness. So, for example, the splitting of the atom, the moon landing, and the storming of the Bastille, which happened about 150 years before he was born, were all linked to him in some way. The paranoia continued. So in 1995, a pizza delivery man rung their doorbell by mistake. And Bala said that this was the British fascist state trying to provoke him by bringing a pizza he hadn't ordered and ringing on his bell to disturb his important political work. And then later that day, there was a huge earthquake in Japan. And then Bala said, the fascist state knocked on God's door, which is Bala's door. And there was a huge earthquake in Kobe to punish the fascist state. And in Japanese, Kobe means God's door. And so it's very unbelievable, delusional beliefs, but his followers did seem to believe what he was saying. Bala believed in his own immortality and told his followers that they too would become immortal if they lived according to his rules. Comrades were not allowed to see a doctor, and he used to say that NHS, which is our National Health Service in the UK, means never help self. So it's on him and they would get better. That's what he said. So the collective, who was in the collective? So it was his wife, Chanda, from Tanzania, Josephine Heriville, a talented Royal College of Music violinist from Ireland, whose father had actually worked with Alan Turing at Bletchley Park, Aisha Wahab, a Malaysian student, Okar Eng, nurse from Malaysia, Josephine's family actually, she disowned them in the 1970s. So the collective itself now was known or referred to as ABCCFP, which stood for Aravindan Balakrishnan's Communist Collectivist Family Pilot Unit. So we are around the late 70s now. So Bala began sexually abusing two of the women in 1979, often physically beating them and making others watch as he did so. All of the women were beaten, and four, not including his wife, were said to have been sexually assaulted or engaged with sexual relationships with him. He was also physically abusing female members, seizing their wages, making them cook and clean for him, while bullying, threatening, and preventing them from leaving with the use of mental and physical coercion. One member, Sean Davies, a Welsh activist whose money used to lease the shop, and used her money to lease the shop. And I think two others' money as well. So after work, those who were in paid work, there were shifts in the bookshop, cooking, listening to Comrade Bala talk about politics until after midnight, then cleaning up, and the leader would hit the women if they nodded off during his talks. While they worked, he spent days in his room reading. Bala insisted members informing each other and that cooking should be done in pairs to avoid poisoning. The members competed for his favour, and it was considered a great honour to be allowed to turn on the shower for him or to enter the bathroom after he had finished to turn the shower off. He once said he was wished 3 million, not 3,000 people had been massacred at Tiananmen Square in 1989. And he predicted that one day 7 billion people were going to be blown up, and said, I'm going to replace them with 1 billion who are like robots. So he's also not a very, as you can tell, a very unkind person. He took credit for all global events, including wars and natural disasters. Get your fix every week by subscribing to Black British Girl Talks wherever you get your podcasts. Any pictures or further information concerning each episode will.
Okay, so yeah, that's most of the story. Anyways, they did catch him in the end. Oh, that's a bug, abort, whatever, one of those. All right. I'm going to play one of the victims now.
Tell me about Jackie. What does Jackie stand for?
Well, can't never shift this thing out the way. See, I can get a big screen. Oh, big screen, where are you? Picture mode, no. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to show the lady and try and blow her up the best I can.
Jehovah, Allah, Christ, Krishna, and immortal Israel.
And what was Jackie?
Is Bala's mind control machine who controls everything in nature and everything in the world.
And what would he say that Jackie would do to you if you did the wrong thing or stood up to him or
kill you or cause you terrible harm?
Jackie came up a lot with all three people, and even now I would suggest that two of the three absolutely are definitely very scared of Jackie, that Jackie's going to take revenge at some point.
Okay, so in this one is a brainwashing cult leader captivated such outlandish, chilling notions that they can feel alien to the world, but he But the reality that it could happen anywhere crashed in when the cult was discovered in Brixton in 2013. Three women members of the collective emerged from South London flat after being held for several decades under the spell of leader Aravindan Balakrishnan. One of them was Balakrishna's own daughter, Kathy, literally born into the cult by one of its members. Hold on. Hold on a minute, born into the cult. Literally born into the cult by one of the members with very little knowledge of the outside world. She was raised collectively by the group, not knowing who her parents were, with a birth name which translated Love of Revolution. It's a horrifying true story, one which is cleanly, imperfectly explored in the BBC documentary The Cult Next Door. Filmmaker Vanessa Engle charts the story of the collective and how Balakrishnan left-leaning Maoist group became a prison for its members as time went on. When I first heard this strange, indulging story, I wanted to discover how this could have happened right under our noses in the heart of London, Ingle says.
My heart is in my belly.
It's only now, 3 years after the women emerged from captivity, that I've been able to piece together a full account of the extraordinary story. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and get up. So the readers put it in parts, the story as well. So hold up, give me a minute.
Prem Moyapinduzi Davies, but she changed her name to Katie Morgan Davies later. Nobody knew that Sean was pregnant until waters broke, and this was in 1983 when the baby was born, and he told the collective the baby was a result of electronic warfare. Comrade Prem, as Katie was known, was dressed in genderless clothing. She never went to school, she never got to know any other children, and only rarely left the house. She was not told who her parents were and that they were dead, and was brought up collectively by the group who were not allowed to show her affection. She was told she was a waif who had been adopted by the cult. So only Bala was allowed to cuddle her, and Katie later said if she was to cuddle other women, he used to say that that's like being a lesbian to cuddle other women. So Katie only learned who her mother was after her mother's, death some 14 years later, while the DNA test after she left the group proved Bala was her father, and her family, her extended family, did not even know she existed. Sean Davies' father had killed himself when she was a teenager, and Bala would repeatedly tell Sean that this was her fault. So her mental health was really poor, especially with all this coercion and control. And by 1996, Sean's mental health had become fragile, and on Christmas Eve of that year, she fell from the second floor bathroom window of a terraced house in Shakespeare Road, Brixton, in an apparent suicide attempt. But her daughter later said she believed that she was trying to escape. Katie, her daughter, later said Sean was acting really oddly, saying she's a devil and starting to behave really unlike herself. They were screaming in the middle of the night, and subsequently I learned that Sean had tried to stab herself with a knife, and she tried to run out the door. Then, because she couldn't escape that way, she went out through the window. On the morning of Christmas Eve, I went downstairs and Sean was lying on the floor. Her hands and legs were tied and she was gagged, and she had this piece of cloth in her mouth, and it may have been a sock or something. And Bala and Chandra were both shouting at Sean. She had tried to run out the door. That's why she was tied up, because she was trying to escape. Sean was taken to hospital where she fell into a coma, and Bala insisted that Sean's family should not be told what had happened, and Josie told them on the phone that Sean was away travelling in India and sends her love. After lying in a coma for 7 months, Sean died. At the inquest into her death, the coroner asked Aisha, another resident, whether Sean had any children, and on Bala's instructions, Aisha said she didn't. We definitely didn't want Katie to be taken away and live a life as of old and not participate in building a new society. That's what Aisha said. So it was around this time that Katie guessed Sean was her mother. But after Sean's death, life will improve for Katie, but we'll come back to that. So it was said that the members stayed because they were too frightened to leave, reporting each other to Bala if they were critical or not following orders. If you questioned him or said anything considered anti-party, he would become furiously angry and hit the person. His control was extreme. One member smashed a bottle of Estee Lauder perfume with a hammer to remove any trace of bourgeois temptation. So Katie, as she grew older and throughout her life, Bala warned Katie that she would experience spontaneous human combustion if she ever stepped outside. Another death was actually to happen in the collective. In 2004, Okar Eng, a nurse from Malaysia who had been with Bala since the 70s, banged her head on a kitchen cabinet and had a stroke, and the following day she died. So these two deaths reinforced the idea in the minds of the remaining members that Bala had the power of life and death over them. So Katie, for example, Aisha said, 2 people have died, and I thought, okay, next time it would be me. And she didn't want to die, so she stayed and tried to internalize his teachings. At the age of 22, Katie never gone outside on her own, thinking she'd be killed. But she decided to try to escape. So she packed her bag, she let herself out the back door of the flat, and then when she asked the passerby for help, they suggested she go to the police station. So she struggled to explain her situation to the officer at the desk because she had no experience of the outside world, and they said, she's run away from home. And the officer persuaded Katie to let her phone Bala, who came to collect her, and he reassured the police that all was well and took Katie back to collective where he denounced her and told her she was ungrateful. So Katie remained in captivity for another 8 years. So over the summer of 2013, Katie lost weight dramatically and became so unwell that Josie feared she might not survive. So arranging a doctor's appointment was not an option, so the two women came up with a plan. And in early October, they saw a story about forced marriage on the BBC News called Forced to Marry, and at the end the newsreader gave out a helpline number. So they made a series of calls and were passed on to Gerard Stocks and Yvonne Hall at Palm Cove Society, who together with the Metropolitan Police coordinated the women's rescue. So each week Bala and Chandra went shopping at the same time, so Katie knew when there would be an opportunity to escape. So we had to make sure that they were nowhere near when we walked out of the house. So 11:15 sharp, we left, Josie and me with our trolleys. Yvonne and Gerard were waiting just outside the corner, and Katie was delighted, but Josie already appeared to be having second thoughts. And actually, Katie was treated in hospital for diabetes. So Aisha wanted to know why the cars coming towards us had white lights and the cars in front of us had red lights. And Katie couldn't cross the road, had never handled money, couldn't look around and make eye contact because they had been in such sheltered lives and had minimal contact with the outside world. So after a while, Josie and Aisha were housed locally in self-sheltered accommodation, but Katie's needs were greater and she lived with Yvonne and Gerard for more than a year while they helped her to develop the skills she would need to live independently. So on 11th of December 2014, it emerged that Bala had been charged with offences relating to cruelty to a person under 16, so 4 counts of rape, 17 counts of indecent assault, and he appeared before Westminster magistrates on 17th of December 2014. His wife Chanda was released early in 2014 as there was considered to be insufficient evidence for a realistic prospect of conviction. Bala was diagnosed as suffering from a narcissistic personality disorder and a grandiose sense of his own self-importance. So his trial started on the 11th of December 2015. And during his trial, he acted as the only defense witness and told jurors that a challenge to his leadership resulted in the 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, and that, all of this. So on 4th of December 2015, Bala was convicted of child cruelty, forced imprisonment, 4 counts of rape, 6 counts of indecent assault, and 2 counts of assault. On 29th of January 2016, Bala was jailed for 23 years. His wife Chandra and Josie stood by him and made a statement to the press declaring his innocence and claiming he had been framed by the British fascist state. Despite having voluntarily left the collective, Josie continues to follow his teachings and now devotes her time to trying to clear his name. Aisha lives in sheltered housing in Leeds, and she claims she was unaware of any sexual abuse taking place in the collective. Although she has regrets about the way Katie was treated, she still believes in campaigning to make the world a better place and volunteers once a week in a local charity shop, and she also now has regular dentist appointments. Katie adopted the last name Morgan Davies, consisting of 2 surnames from her mother's side of the family. And as of 2017, she was doing her best to leave the indoctrination of her past behind and made really good progress. She was studying English and Maths at college. She moved out of supported accommodation to a flat of her own. She had the DNA test and she said, "I used to hate Bala, but not anymore. Nelson Mandela said that you are still in prison if you hold on to your anger, hatred and bitterness. So there's no place for that in my life. I would like to reconcile with him in the future if he wants that, but you can't clap with one hand." I would also like to mention a program about this. It's called The Cult Next Door, and it features interview 2 of the women who escaped, Aisha Wahab, and she was part of the cult for 40 years, and obviously Katie Morgan Davies, who was Bala's daughter, who was born and raised in captivity. So if you can access that, it's a very interesting program. I would also like to quote the sources I used for this program. I would also like to quote the sources I used for this podcast. So bbc.co.uk, huffingtonpost.co.uk, wikipedia.co.
Yeah, so like it is what I said earlier before, like the traits of a dangerous cult. Grandioso. See, the grandioso is mentioned again. I can't believe the woman stood by his side. She must have been really brainwashed to do that, because if after seeing all that happening in the house, or what, because I think he was trying to create a commune, so she stood by his side anyway. I mean, the young lady that was shown in between, that's the lady that grew up in the cult. And like I said, if you like she said, if you watch The Cult Next Door, there's a documentary on BBC One or BBC2, one of them, right? You'll see how like when you think there is something going on, like just a family behind that door. Sometimes it's not just the family behind that door. It could be a lot of things going on behind that door, which is what Christina said. You never know what's going on behind closed doors, right? And the fact that how like it was in Brixton, which is the most popular place in I would say in South London area, well, one of the most popular places that it happened, and because and the way how it's set is like he was happy making the women do the work and do everything else and do all that for him. And when she started talking about the stuff, the chores, what the woman had to do, once again, like I said, Nature Boy have studied these people in one form or the other, because the way how he has the women over there, right, they are doing the exact same thing these women was doing, right? And there is abuses going on in Nature Boy's camp as well, even though they're smiling on the outside and looking pretty on the outside. So that's why people always say the grass is not always greener, because you don't know what's going on in that person behind the closed doors. You don't know what they're going through. So the fact that a child was born in there, and she wasn't used to certain stuff. Oh no, loud. and she wasn't used to certain stuff as well. Now, the young lady, which I think they're talking about, is definitely that lady that I just pulled up earlier. I think it's the same lady that he was talking about, the one who escaped. So that lady that I showed, who was about to tell her story, that the BBC have on their thing, this lady, 3 years after escaping an abusive collective who had held her captive since birth. This is the lady that they were talking about. Let me see if it says her name as well. So a lot was going on, you see. So they got him kind of older in his age, 73 years old. Yeah, it's very similar to Nature Boy. The same MO as Nature Boy, strange enough, and probably others like him. So this young lady grew up in it. So, like, remember Velvet took her daughter out of the um the cult. Now she would have been brought up just as like how this girl would have been brought up, and she would have had to figure out how to escape her father. Because like the way how it's panned out, right? He was doing a lot. 2 people died while in the collective. So let me see what she says on this one as well. Actually, Katie, no, it's not Katie Morgan. He can't hit me anymore. Oh, so he used to hit her. So on the morning of 25th of October 2013, Yvonne Hall and Grad Stokes, a married couple who ran Palm Cove Society, a charity that supports victims of slavery, found themselves outside a house in a quiet street in Brixton, South London. To the onlooker, it might have seemed as if it had only the trees and the railings for company. In fact, this was not the case. Arranged at a discreet distance were half a dozen plainclothes police. The situation was like a scene from a film. The Renaissance had been carefully planned. They had taken up their position at 11:05, and at 11:15 sharp, 2 women would emerge from a property trailing their shopping trolleys, unless, of course, the whole hoax. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness, but at the appointed hour, previously, a door did indeed open. 2 women appeared with trolleys. They described what they would be wearing, say, as soon as I saw them, I knew it was true, having imaged them. Hall is as warm and reassuring a person as you could hope to meet. She and Stokes took the women to a place of safety, and there they strutted through their story. It was the older of the pair, 57-year-old Josephine, who had made the call, dialing a helpline number she had memorized after hearing it on television. The younger woman, who is known as Katie Morgan Davis, and who is now 30, explained that she had been held captive in Pickford Place, a series of other South London properties from birth. The man responsible for this, they said, was 73-year-old. He was 73! Whew. Whom they knew as Comrade Bala.
Mommy, I need to put it back in the wall.
No, leave it. Alright, sorry, my daughter's making me lose my trail of thought. Now, so he was talking about the Marcusons and all that stuff. So the collective in the organisation had been involved since 1978. Hold on a minute. They also revealed increasingly anxious now, and that the 3rd woman, 69-year-old Aisha, remained inside the property. No, she must have been scared. See, my daughter's not allowing me to read. Okay, she's being distracted now. Hold on a minute. Yeah, it is the same water. Okay, so yes, he was very similar to Nature Boy. Beatings, putting down, controlling behavior, all narcissistic patterns. Yeah, that's why I did the mind of a cult leader, because they have various strategies to how they do stuff and how they operate. I'm gonna put up one video of what's been going on a little bit with Nature Boy to show the grandioso thing as well, which is linked. Hold on, I'm gonna find it as well, even though this has nothing to do with it. But this guy is kind of similar to Nature Boy. Yeah, yeah. I think I have the one. There's a video of how much control these so-called people have over people, and it is quite evil what he did. Unfortunately, the victims often defend them. Yes, well, the wife was defending him. The wife was defending him. This lady Morgan ain't defending him, but the wife. So yeah, it just shows you, like I said, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, really. He definitely had them under some kind of like um closed mindset. I mean, like they still had trolleys and stuff, and there was one lady sitting indoors as the police entered the place and all this. Wow. So yeah, but it's good when you hear that they find, like, luckily for her, she memorized the number so that she can get help. Like Nature Boy lady seems to be not very capable of that. They haven't got a strategy to get out of the problem. He had them under his spell. Yeah, it was under. Yeah, it's very like that to me too. He definitely had holes on them. Like if, like, if like they're getting hitting their heads and people not even worrying about it, like they sort of just got on with life, and they obviously move from place to place. Very similar, like, but like in the previous video, there is traits to how these cult leaders are. There's a lot. The traits are very similar. There's no difference. All have similarities. All of them. Big things. And his cult was definitely a dangerous cult. Him and the guy that was put up before, the Anthill kids, very very brutal in how they dealt with their members, keeping them in order, keeping them silenced, um, like, so it's not, so they're not always from across the pond. I think there might even be one going on now. You never know, in big old UK. You never know. But I'm gonna go come off so that I can go deal with little one because she come in a few times already, and yeah. Right. So thank you, Christine. We can't pick this as much as we would like to because of the time that is as well. Otherwise, I'll pick through it. It's not, you know. Um. But yeah, thank you, Christine, for passing through. Thank you, Christine. And yeah, you never know what's going on, you know. What did Christine say? There's no doubt that he transferred the abuse he went through as a child onto these women, which is the same thing what Nature Boy is doing right at this current moment right now. So, oh, that's okay. Thank you. But I am gonna come off and I'm gonna let this process and go through what it's gonna go through in case they got to take out stuff or whatever. Yeah. So please comment underneath these videos. Please check previous videos that was made way before these other videos. I think all the videos basically needs to get a something because each video is done at different times, made for different reasons, different purposes. These are all teaching things. Yes. Oh, okay, I'm coming. Yeah, so yeah, childhood traumas passed on. Yeah, so I am going to come off because my daughter is in need now. So okay, with that said, I will see you later. Bye.